I'm with Heidi Pidcoke today, and Heidi is a psychotherapist who has a vision that she would like to bring into this world. So, Heidi, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a psychotherapist, and I've lived in fairly many different countries throughout my life. And one thing that really moves me and that I've spent a lot of attention on is trauma. And one of the things that helped me understand how big a problem that was when I lived in South Africa. And later on, I lived in Kenya, and I had a psychotherapy practice there for 8 years. And seeing the trauma in my own family, where I grew up in Brazil, in South Africa, in Kenya, has given me this huge passion to address trauma in a very specific sector, in that of humanitarian aid workers and peacekeeping personnel. One of the women that I had in my practice in Nairobi is a great example of what inspired this passion in me. Her name is Nancy, and she worked with a camp with internally displaced people. That's obviously not her real name. And she was working very, very hard with people who were marginalized, who were being mistreated by systems, by their own government. Some of them had been tortured, some of them had been abused within the camp, and that was her daily job. And she could cope with that for the most part. But one day she got mugged on her way back home, and her organization did not handle that really well. And she started to fall apart, and that's when she came in to see me. And I realized that there was this pattern of people who give their lives to those who are the most vulnerable, who when they themselves feel vulnerable, don't often get treated very well. And I moved to Europe last year in order to start a project to address that need, to say, how can we create a culture change within the humanitarian aid world, and in other places where people serve, in places of conflict, of disaster, of insecurity, so that their psychological well-being is better attended to.
Yeah, great. So, can you tell us a little more about the program that you have in mind that you'd like to create?
Yeah, so some people have been collaborating with myself included on the development of a 350-page resource kit that looks at addressing stress and trauma symptoms and helping people understand what treatment is available, that especially the 2 treatments that the WHO has approved. And so right now we're working in a consortium of people to develop online trainings, face-to-face trainings, services to create organizational capacity to better care for their staff. And we're doing that with several people who are based in Geneva, but hoping to have an impact that is much, much broader. In order for me to continue my own personal development and my own personal learning on trauma, I've taken on a 4-year commitment to do a course in core energetics, which focuses a lot on trauma. And so this video is to ask you to help me in my last year of finishing this program that is adding a lot to my toolbox in terms of addressing trauma in individuals, in organizations, in societies, and communities. One of the things that I wanted to let you know is that the statistics of people who are working in the humanitarian aid world, one professional who I spoke to said that the turnover in this field is 3 to 5 times higher than in other fields. Another organization that works solely on humanitarian aid has seen that people who come off the field after working in humanitarian postings have around 30% PTSD symptoms, which is much, much higher than the average population, which is around, in the United States, where statistics are looked at, around 7 to 8% in the general population. And then yet another UN agency looked at their own staff, and they saw that like the drinking and the isolation of their staff was high even when they were at headquarters, when they were off the field. So these symptoms continue even after people have served their term. And so that trauma is something that we need to look at much more comprehensively. And I'm asking you to help me finish this course. It'll take $6,700 in order for me to do so, to look at program costs, to look at the travel costs, and all the associated costs and requirements in order to finish this program in June of 2018.
Okay. So do you have any way for people who feel like they're called to actually support this cause, any way for them to follow your journey and developments on your journey and how this program is developing?
Yes. So should you choose to support me, which I'm very, very grateful, if you could, I would allow you to know what's happening in the development of our program through a newsletter, through an online newsletter. And depending on the level of support, you could please come to my graduation in June, which is in the Netherlands, in this location where I'm sitting now. And so I will let you know, like, the development of the program, how we are succeeding in creating culture change that looks at the prevention of mental distress versus only the intervention when that distress is acute.
Great. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us as a finishing remark?
I am so privileged to be in this position of bringing care and bringing attention to those who are underserved. And so I so appreciate your walking alongside me as we try to create a world where healing can take place and where people can be served in a healthier way, especially those who are the most vulnerable. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Heidi.